Hi guys, Stanley Orr here, and in today's devlog we are going to be taking a look at character rigging, although not what you normally think when it comes to Unity and rigging up characters. You see, in this game we're going to be using ToomBoom Harmony to create all the sprites and animation, as it's my preferred animation software of choice. So, if this is the kind of content you like, be sure to subscribe, because we're going to be covering every stage of the game dev process, from preliminary artwork to coding to final art, you name it, we're going to be covering it. And remember, we upload every Saturday, and I am definitely not just reinserting this after Lisa reminded me to plug that. Well, with that out of the way, I suppose it's time to just get started. Alright, so to get us started, what you can see here is I've opened up the previous project I created 2 episodes ago in ToomBoom Harmony, which, by the way, if you haven't seen that, you should totally check it out. And I've extracted the 2 characters that I drew in there. I'm gonna use them as a basis to trace over the individual parts for the final character rigs. As you can see right here, I'm creating a whole bunch of different layers for every single part that I could possibly need. You know, head, body, arms, legs, fingers, etc. It pretty much goes without saying, but for those of you who aren't sure, I am drawing every part on the appropriate layer. So when it comes to drawing the head, I draw it on the head layer. When it comes to drawing the torso, I draw it on the torso layer. I'm also properly positioning the puppet's pivot points, as you don't want the limbs rotating in the improper place. Like, imagine if your elbows were like positioned on your wrist or something like that. And over there you see I'm just organizing the color palette real quick. Now, I know what you're thinking, and no, I'm not drawing the character in a T-pose because I'm a total meme lord. I'm also doing it because it's easy to work with. Putting it in a T-pose so that its arms are out and away from the body helps it so that I can articulate the different joints better when it comes time to rig. Also, it helps you assert dominance over the plebs. Some of you are probably wondering why I decided to break it down into such small components like the mustache, the goatee, the mole, the hair. Well, I'm doing it because in the future we might have DLC, and I do like money. So, in the interest of making lots of fat, stinking cash, I decided I'd make it easy on myself to swap out individual components when it comes to making new costumes for the same character. Believe me, it would have bit me in the butt in the future if I hadn't done this. I suppose I should talk about what I'm doing here in the node view. Basically, I'm making sure everything's super organized so that it's easy to work with, because all these individual pieces have a hierarchy that needs to be in place. For example, my arm moves my hand, but not the other way around. And those big blocks labeled comp that I'm plugging some of them into in groups are composite nodes. You can look at composite nodes basically like rooms in a building, and whatever happens to a room happens to everyone inside that room. So basically, if I take a composite node and crank up the brightness, then that applies to everything that's plugged into that composite node. It's also an efficient way to visually organize things. Well, this'll take a while. Hey, I'm gonna be back real quick. I'm gonna go grab some coffee. All right. So what did I miss? No, nothing much. Okay, so it looks like I'm just going in and making sure the layers are in the proper order so that what needs to be on top is on top and what needs to be beneath is beneath. Now, I know this is gonna sound strange, but I'm only putting bones in the individual limbs that I want to be floppy and stretchy and stuff, not the ones that have solid joints. That's why there is an obscene amount of bones in the arm right there. It's kind of like a spine, actually. And I'm also slipping a kinematic output node between the wrist and the tip of the arm. Basically, it's me telling the computer, hey, buddy, I know you're bending the entire arm in a noodle-like way, and that's great and all, but leave the wrist out of it. Otherwise, the hand would look like jelly also, and we don't want that. Alright, so for the waist I had to do something a little bit tricky because I have the belt part, but I also had the waist and the individual legs. All 4 are separate layers. What I had to wind up doing was create an individual bone for each of the structures, but this ran the risk of it separating whenever the legs were bent too far one way or the other. I wanted it to appear as one solid entity like, you know, pants are supposed to. So what I had to do was create what's called a deformation composite. Basically it keeps them nice and glued together like jelly without having to keep them all on one layer. That way they can still overlap each other without causing any problems. Pro tip for everyone who possibly can do this in any program you're using, color code your layers. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of hassle and it helps with organization. Also, later on I'm going to return to the node view and group everything up into individual components. That way it's even easier to identify what the heck we're looking at. Alright, right here I'm creating a thick outline for the entire body, except the legs. I want those to remain nice and little spindly things, but everything else from the belt up is going to have this thick outline around it. How I'm doing this is by inserting a matte resize node. Now, when it comes to drawing, mattes, M-A-T-T-E-S's, are basically the shape of any given thing. And as you can imagine, a node that is called matte resize just resizes the matte, making it either skinnier or thicker depending on what number you put in. And then I'm also applying what's called a matte color, and that basically changes it to any color that you want. Pretty self-explanatory there. Then I make sure this thick version of the character is dropped beneath everything else so that it doesn't cover anything. Now it's functioning like a black outline. I'm using the same process to create a white glow around everything, as demonstrated in the concept art video where I created the aesthetics. Now see, here's why it was important to compartmentalize everything down to a very small level. As you can see here, it makes it super easy to create a twin sister version of the character. I'm just going in there and creating new versions of the head, the hair, the lips, the arms, etc. And this way I don't have to re-rig an entire puppet from scratch every time I want to do a new character based off of this model. This right here would be one of the only additional differences between the brother character and the sister character, the dress. Since her legs are sort of hidden behind the dress, it would be stupid to actually draw them in. They'll never be shown anyways. And because a piece of fabric obviously behaves differently than the two legs, we're gonna have to get a little creative. By which I mean struggling for a good chunk of time trying to rig up the proper bone shape so that the dress behaves without bending in the wrong places or deforming her entire waist. That took a little bit, but eventually I settled on this design. Is it perfect? No. Will it do the job? Yeah, good enough. I mean, really. You're not gonna be looking at this dress in much detail anyways. Those characters are tiny on the screen. And finally, the fun part, the culmination of my efforts, posing the characters to make sure everything's bending the right way. Oh, yes. I don't know, something about posing it at the end of creating a character rig is just so satisfying because you see it all come together in a perfect way and you realize, yes, this is what I wanted. Totally worth all the hassle and time it took to create them, absolutely. Oh, and by the way, if you can think of any fun poses for us to put the characters into, please let me know because we're always going to be looking for that sort of stuff to put in the game. With all that being said, I guess it's time for me to leave, so thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoy this time lapse of me posing and animating the characters while the video rolls to an end. Be sure to subscribe if you like this sort of stuff because we'll be posting a new video every single Saturday. Anyways, that's all for now, and I will talk to you guys later.